Hey, what's going on, guys? Room Gaming here, back to the video. Today's episode, we're taking a look at Kaisa in the bot lane as ADC. Taking a look at some of her abilities. Her passive is Second Skin. Her basic attacks are going to stack Plasma, dealing increased bonus magic damage. Any allies' immobilizing effects are going to help stack that Plasma. Additionally, Kaisa's item purchases upgrade her basic skills that have more powerful properties. Up next is her Q, so Kaisa shoots a swarm of missiles that seek out nearby targets. The upgrade to this is to just shoot more missiles. Taking a look at her W, Void Seeker. Kaisa will shoot a long-range missile, marking enemies with her passive. The upgraded version of this will apply more passive marks and reduce the cooldown on champion hit. Her E Supercharge will briefly increase her movement speed, then increase her attack speed. The upgrade will briefly grant her invisibility. And then finally, we have her ultimate Killer Instinct. Kaisa will dash near a enemy champion. Her summoners will be Flash Barrier. Her runes will be under the Precision Tree. She'll be taking Lethal Tempo. This will give her stacking attack speed. She'll be running Presence of Mind for lane sustain, as well as Legend Bloodline, which will give her stacking lifesteal. And then finally Coup de Grace for more execute damage. She'll be running Magical Footwear, as well as Biscuit Delivery in the Inspiration Tree for both scaling and lane sustain. Her levels 1 through 3 should be taking Q into W into E, then her max will be Q, E, W, taking ultimate when available. Her itemization is very unique, as she builds a hybrid of both AP and AD. She'll be taking Health Potion, Doran's Blade, Trinity Force, Berserker Greaves, and Rage Blade for Health Cut, and then she'll be going Gnasher's Tooth, Zon used to help her out against assassins, and then finally Rabadon's Death Cap. Kaisa is going to be strong against Callista, Ezreal, and Jhin. So typically burst mobility champions, and she's going to be weak with scaling ADCs like a Nyla, Kog'Maw, and Jinx. Okay, getting into some of the early, mid, and late game. Let's start with the early game. So early game is going to be Kaisa's probably weakest point, and not necessarily because she's bad at trading, but because she does lack early range, and she does lack some consistent DPS without her evolved Q. So she is going to struggle against anything that has pretty decent early game presence like a Draven, Caitlyn, or Lucian. And your job is to play around controlled scaling. So typically you want to keep waves slow pushing into you, and you want to hover towards the safer side of your lane until you're able to build into your first item. Look to trade with auto W auto, and feel free to engage if your support does go all in and they see an opportunity, but don't try to overextend for pokes. And if you are running the AP poke build, such as Doran's Ring into an early lost chapter, you will, of course, be maxing your W first, but you do have to be careful as it can be mana hungry. So early game is mostly about farming, playing on the safer side of your specific lane, and really just following up with your support if they see an opportunity. So mid game is where you're going to get a little bit more breathing room, and this is going to be where you're able to get your first evolve, and that's typically going to be your Q. And this is typically the point in the game where you want to become a little bit more active on the map, and you don't want to just be sitting in a side lane. In the mid game, you also have access to your ultimate. And the great thing about your ultimate is this gives you a large amount of threat and a large radius around your champion. Even though you might not necessarily be right on top of the fight, you can hover around your other teammates and still be a threat. So you can really use Fog of War to your advantage and almost play like an assassin. This is also really good in side lanes. If you see somebody just kind of passively pushing a lane, you can wait for them to use some of their abilities, then try to apply a stack of plasma and then just ultimate on top of them and quickly assassinate them and take them out. So typically playing Kaisa, you want to kind of hover around any sort of action points that are happening on the map, like an objective or a big push mid. You don't necessarily want to be in the middle of it, but you want to be following up after that engagement happens. Now, by the late game, you have transformed into pretty much a monster at this point. If you kept up with your evolutions and your power spikes, you now have access to a completely unique hybrid build that's very difficult to itemize against. Now, depending on the build that you went with, if you went the AP build, you're more of a glass cannon turret that kind of sits backline, and you're trying to snipe health pools with your W. If you went more of an AD build, then you're going to be more of a high DPS duelist, and you're looking to mainly clean up. But if you went the build recommended in this guide, you can kind of play as both. Now, one thing that's going to be very unique to Kaisa at this stage in the game is due to the fact that you have your Zhonya's Hourglass, you can kind of dive in, get a kill, assassinate a target, and Zhonya's right on top of that, and you can almost work as an engagement for your team. So it's going to be a portion of the game where playing around Fog of War is going to be even more important than even the mid or early game, especially as the death timers start to increase. So late game Kaisa is going to kind of be this weird margin between delete or get deleted. If you can kind of survive that initial threat window, whatever that is, like a Malphite ult, whatever, you typically clean up and carry the rest of the fight. Now, another thing that's very unique about Kaisa is she's so adaptable to all the different compositions. So this is something that could have been put, earlier in the guide, but depending on if you're against an assassination comp, a poke comp, or a frontline comp, you can completely cater your build around what you're against. So if you're against a squishy poke comp, you might go something more like Ludens or Storm Surge. If you're against an assassination comp, then something like a Zanya's, of course, would be good. If you're against a frontline comp, then of course a Kraken or Rage Blade, even a PD or Blade of the Rune King would be strong as well. So you're not necessarily just this pure ADC late game, you're an adaptive carry, and you can kind of patch the holes in your team comp. Overall, late game team fights are going to be very chaotic, so you just want to be very patient and you're in a position for cleanup. You can sometimes initiate with your ult, but that's typically only going to be advised if you have vision on everybody, and if somebody's sitting in Fog of War, we would not advise in doing that. If you guys enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. We'll see you in the next one.